It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning. Thanks for joining me this morning as we discuss real estate here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I'm your host, Brian Beatty, and I appreciate you guys tuning in this morning. It is definitely a sleep in and turn on the fireplace, drink your coffee kind of morning. So appreciate you being with me. This is what I want to talk about over the next hour. And if this is your first time tuning into this program, we talk about real estate on this program. We talk about housing. We talk about national, regional, local real estate news that impacts us here in the Low Country, so that if you're thinking of buying, selling, or investing in real estate, you're an informed consumer. I also share my experiences as somebody that's been selling real estate for about 11 years, almost 12 now, in the Charleston area. I've done about 1,000 transactions, so I bring that experience to the table, share some stories with you, which we will do this morning. But here's what I want to talk about over the next hour. I want to talk about the process of buying and selling a house. You know, do you list first? Do you list after you find something you want to buy? How do you work that process? How do you protect yourself throughout that process? We're going to talk about something called home sale contingencies. A little later on in the program, I want to discuss staging. Is it necessary? Should you do it? What are the benefits? What are the pros, cons, all that fun stuff? And then I want to talk about closing costs and prepaids. When you go to buy a house, what are all those extra fees that you need to pay for? When you sell a house, are there any fees? So I want to go through that. I hope you guys better understand the dollars and cents associated with your real estate transaction. Now, I'm in the studio this morning. I'd love to take your calls. There's no topic too broad, no question too specific. Would love to hear from you. The number here in the studio is 843-556-1250. 843-556-1250. Feel free to call in, ask your question. Could be something that we're talking about at this particular moment. It could just be a general knowledge question. There's no question too silly. Don't feel like it's too rudimentary of a question to call and ask. Here to help. 843-556-1250 is the number in the studio. Now, if you want to reach out to me personally, you're thinking of doing a real estate transaction, buying, selling, investing, you want some advice, you have a specific question you don't want aired on this program, then feel free to call me personally. My number is 843-345-1273. That's 345-1273. Or go to listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. A lot of good information on there. Every recording of the show is on that website. You can search the MLS. I have a free value tool to help you determine what your home is worth. And, of course, you can learn more about myself and my team. Well, let's get into this, shall we? Let's talk about the process of selling and buying a house. You know, obviously, most people that want to sell their house and buy another don't really have the luxury of just simply owning two houses. They can't just go and, buy a house and then figure out what to do with their current house later. Some do. Most just don't have that capacity. So when you decide to move out of the current home you own and buy another, it requires a lot of finesse from the agent that you've hired to assist you in that process. Now, I do want to say before we get too far down into this is that I'm very proud to say that throughout my career in selling real estate, over a decade of selling real estate, about 1,000 transactions, I have never made anybody homeless. And I have been through this process of selling your house and buying another without having to go rent something, without having to live out of your car or a moving truck for 2 days. I've been able to do this successfully, probably hundreds of times. Nobody has ever been homeless, but it's because I've been able to do that by contractually protecting my clients and in not taking unnecessary risks. You have to realize that, as unfortunate as this sounds and as unfortunate as it is to say, some agents really struggle with this process. There are a lot of agents out there that struggle with writing a bulletproof contract without, the added stress of selling and buying a home at the same time. And I say this because, look, we're going to probably sell 200 homes this year. And the amount of contracts I see on listings that I represent that are sent to me from buyers that want to, a buyer wants to purchase one of my listings. And in order for them to buy one of my listings, they need to sell their house first. And they'll send me a contract. It'll have language in it that says, purchaser has to sell their current residence located at 123 Main Street. And that's all it says. That is the contingency to the purchase. And then we're going to get into this in just a minute. But that is 100% lazy. It could be naive, whatever you want to label it as, but it does not protect the buyer properly. It sure doesn't protect the seller properly. So let's talk about these home sale contingencies that you can write into a contract. And again, if you have questions about this, I know a lot of people are kind of pumping the brakes right now, and it's evidenced by the market. We typically between October and January, we will see somewhere between 15 and 20% of the total number of listings in our market come off the market. Now, the majority of them will reappear in the spring of next year, but we always have this lull this time of year where a lot of people take their home off the market, they reset, they take a break, they tried selling, it didn't work out, and now they're going to come up with a new game plan. And I know a lot of you are probably in that position, or you're considering buying something, selling something next year. So, if you have specific questions, again, feel free to call into this program, 843-556-1250. Now, if you have a personal question or something you'd like to discuss with me, my cell phone is 345-1273, 345-1273. Just remember that. So let's talk about these home sale contingencies. Here's what you need to know. If you're going to buy a home, contingent upon selling yours first, all right? There are two different types of home sale contingencies. Number one is what we call a sale and settlement contingency, and another is just called a settlement contingency. So a sale and settlement contingency, as the name implies, is dependent upon the buyer selling and settling on an existing home, okay? This type of contingency is used if the buyer has not yet received and accepted an offer to purchase on their current home. So, following me so far, in general, this type of contingency is what allows the seller to continue to market the home to other potential buyers with the stipulation that the buyer will be given the opportunity to remove the sale and settlement contingency within a specified period of time if the seller receives another offer. And if that buyer can't remove the contingency, the contract gets terminated, and the seller can accept the other offer, and the earnest money is returned to the buyer. So we call that a kick-out clause. And I'm just going to say that again because I know when we start talking about some of this stuff, sometimes it can get a little confusing. If you want to buy a property and you need to sell yours first, typically the property you want to purchase is going to require you to include something called a kick-out clause in your contract, which means that for the property you want to purchase, the seller is going to accept your offer. But there's going to be a caveat that if another buyer comes along and makes an offer on their property and that second buyer does not have a home to sell, then because the sellers have already taken your offer, they're going to give you a predetermined amount of time, usually 24 to 48 hours, to remove the home sale contingency and proceed with the purchase, or you get kicked out of the contract. You get your earnest money back, and the seller now gets to work with the buyer that doesn't need to sell their house. Make sense? Okay. So let's move on to a settlement contingency. A settlement contingency is used if the buyer has already marketed their home and they have a contract in hand and a settlement date is set. And because the property isn't truly sold until settlement, right? It's just pending. It's not sold until settlement takes place. So this contingency protects the buyer in the event the sale on their house falls through. Now, in most cases, this type of contingency prohibits a seller from asking for something called a kick-out clause, which is what we just discussed. If the home doesn't close, the contract can be terminated. So usually what you would see in a settlement contingency would be, okay, we will allow you to include this contingency in the contract. However, if your sale doesn't go through, you are required to notify us, and we have the ability at that point in time to cancel your agreement. Okay? So those are the two types of contingencies. When we come back, I want to talk about the considerations you should make if you're a buyer and the considerations you should make if you're a seller. We're going to wrap up this segment, and then we're going to move on, okay? So if you have questions, feel free to call in. Now's a good time to talk with John, our program director, and get your questions lined up. The number here, 843-556-1250. And thanks again for tuning into the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Broadcast Saturday mornings at 9 and Sunday mornings at 10 on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. WTMA. Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back. The conversation continues here on the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show, right here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. In the studio taking your calls this morning, the number here is 843-556-1250, 843-556-1250. If you have a question, you want to be on the program, give John Quincy a call, and he'll patch you through to me. Any question is acceptable. Love to answer your questions, hear from you, maybe a story, experience. We're here to help, 843-556-1250. Now, again, if you want to reach out to me personally, you have a real estate question, comment, concern, plans to transact in real estate, buy, sell, invest in real estate, feel free to give me a call personally. My cell phone number, and you can text this number as well, 843-345-1273, 345-1273. I've had that number since I was a freshman in college, and I'll never change it. You're also welcome to go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. More on myself, my team, who we are, what we do, what we sell, how we sell it. Every version I've ever recorded on this radio program, going back about 5 years. Search the MLS, use some of the tools on the website to determine what your home is worth. All that fun stuff and more. Listingsincharleston.com. Let's continue our discussion about home sale contingencies. The process of buying a home contingent upon the sale of your current home. You want to move into a new house, but you need to sell yours first in order to afford the other. So we just talked about two different kinds of contingencies to the contract that you would write as a buyer. One is a sale and settlement contingency, and the other is a settlement contingency. And just a very quick recap, if you're just joining us, a sale and settlement contingency is your home is on the market, but you haven't accepted an offer yet, so you need to accept an offer, and then you need to close on your current house in order to receive the funds to purchase the home you want to buy. The other one is just a settlement contingency. Your home's already under contract. It's not necessarily a sure thing, but you've already reached an agreement with the buyer. It's just a matter of time before that deal closes. You get your equity out of that property, and you're now able to purchase the other. So what I want to do is just give you some things to consider. And let's start with buyers, okay? Because, the market for sellers, it's just a sellers-driven market right now, and frankly, it has been for years. That's starting to change a little bit in some areas of Charleston, which I'm going to discuss toward the tail end of the year. I don't know if it's going to be next show or the last show of the year, but we're going to talk about what's going to happen in 2018 a little later on in this month. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek. I'm expecting some shifting in this market. I'm expecting things to not necessarily slow down, because when I think people hear slow down, they think prices are going down. That's not what I mean. When I say slow down, I mean the rate by which prices are increasing is going to decrease. So we're going to talk more about that toward the end of the year here. But as a buyer, here are things that you need to consider if you're going to sell your home and then buy another. And, as I mentioned earlier, most buyers need to sell their existing home in order to purchase a new one, especially when they're, trading up into a more expensive house. So a home sale contingency gives buyers the time they need to sell and settle before committing to a new house, by avoiding owning two homes at once and holding two mortgages at one time. That is not the goal for 90% of people. A home sale contingency makes for a seamless transaction. The buyer can sell one house and then move immediately into the other house by closing on it the same day, and not have to spend this awkward amount of time renting somewhere, or sleeping in a moving truck, or I've heard stories, as I mentioned in my first segment on the show, that has never happened to my clients. And, I've done 1,000 transactions. As time goes by, I hate to say this, but you can't make everybody happy. You can't get it perfectly right every single time. Things will happen. It's how you prepare yourself for it that's the most important thing. It's how you protect yourself contractually to prevent things like that from happening that makes all the difference. So, as we're talking about considerations that buyers need to understand with home sale contingencies in this whole process, even though a home sale contingency helps bring some peace of mind to this process, it doesn't avoid the other costs of home buying. You're still going to spend money on home inspections, bank fees, appraisal fees. All these expenses are not refundable if this deal falls through due to your property not selling in time. Okay, so that's something you need to take into consideration. In addition to that, the buyers are likely going to have to pay for the property, or they're going to have to pay more for a property, I should say, if they're going to use a home sale contingency. And here's what I mean by that. It is a seller's market. Sellers, by and large, do not like the prospect of putting their home under contract while they wait for you to put your home under contract. Obviously, from a seller's perspective, it's much more advantageous to accept a contract from a buyer with a home sale contingency if the buyer's home is already on the market and already under contract with another buyer. If the seller has to inherit the risk of your home not selling, meaning your home's listed but it's not under contract yet, typically they're going to want some sort of premium for that. You're going to have to make it worth their while. Because remember, when they're selling a house, they have places to go too. And if it's a seller's market, they're kind of in the driver's seat. So home sale contingencies are challenging to get accepted when representing a buyer if you don't make them a good offer. It's I hate to say it this way, and it's not this way all the time, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want to sell your house and buy another, and your home is not already under contract, that seller is not going to look at that offer as a very strong offer unless you give them attractive terms or you give them an attractive price. So, something for you to take into consideration. Yes, they might work with you, but they're essentially gambling on your ability to sell your property so that you can purchase theirs. They're going to want to be compensated for that risk. Okay? Now, let's talk about some considerations for sellers. And again, any questions, any comments, story you'd like to share, happy to answer. Doesn't have to be on this topic. Anything real estate related, here to help. The number in the studio, 843-556-1250. 556-1250. So let's talk about considerations for sellers. A home sale contingency, obviously, it can be risky for sellers because there's no guarantee that the house is going to sell. Even if that contract allows the seller to continue to market the property and accept other offers, the house may be listed, the house will be listed as under contract. Okay? It's going to, in the MLS, especially in Charleston, it's going to say active contingent, which means the sellers have accepted an offer on the property. It just makes it less attractive to other buyers. Now, on some of these websites like Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, Homes.com, agents' personal websites, brokerage websites, all of them are a little bit different in terms of how they classify properties that have contracts accepted on them. Some will say active, some will say active contingent, some will say under contract, some will say pending, which is what makes it so darn frustrating as a buyer to search for real estate online, because you find something you like and you call somebody about it and, that went under contract, a day after it was listed. That was 3 months ago. I don't know why it hadn't closed yet, but, so that's something that as a seller you need to understand, is that once your property goes active contingent, the amount of online traffic you're going to receive is going to be significantly lower. Now, in our MLS, this is kind of technical, but in our MLS, we have the ability to click a drop-down box that states the contingency reason. So if I'm able to select kick-out clause as the contingency reason, some of those reasons would be things like home inspection, financing, kick-out clause, so on and so forth. So if I select kick-out clause, meaning I'm representing a seller A buyer makes us an offer and they need to sell their house first. They've included a home sale contingency saying, hey, I want to buy this listing, but I need to sell my house first. I, representing the seller, would say, that's great. We're going to include a kick-out clause, meaning we will take your contract and we will work toward closing. However, if another buyer makes an offer and they don't have a home to sell, then we want the right to accept that offer. But you have 24 hours to make your decision. You can either buy this house and potentially own 2 homes, or you can just back out and we can go with the other buyer and we'll give you your earnest money back. So if I have the ability to put kick-out clause in the MLS, I can also change the remarks on the listing to say, kick-out clause in place. If you don't have a home to sell, you can still potentially buy this house. There's some marketing ways around this problem of changing a property to active contingent status or under contract status, because real estate agents don't like showing properties to buyers that are already under contract. It's kind of, in their mind, a waste of their time. Now, if they're being really diligent or if a buyer really likes a property, it makes sense to see it, even if it's under contract, and they can make backup offers, and that's a different discussion for a different time. But, sellers just take into consideration the fact that once you put your property under contract, it doesn't matter what the contingency reason is, the amount of online traffic you get, the amount of calls we as agents will receive on the property, and the amount of showings that will translate from that will be less. So we are taking a risk in accepting a contract with a home sale contingency. And, when buyers are looking for a property to buy, most will steer clear of a property that's already under contract because they don't want to waste their time and risk falling in love with a property that, they may never have the chance to buy. So most agents, they don't even do searches for properties under contract for that very reason. They just don't want to waste their time either. And again, we have ways around that. I've talked about that. And remember, it's your listing agent's job to market your property for sale and to find interested buyers up until the day everybody signs on the dotted line at the closing attorney's office. Most agents just stop their marketing once a home goes under contract. And I think that's a big mistake. I think it's a disservice to the sellers. And I think there are opportunities to create that, that backup offer, that plan B, plan C, plan D, if the current contract falls through. So before you as a seller agree to a home sale contingency, here's what you should investigate. Okay, here are the things that you need to know about this potential buyer's current home. Number one, is the home already on the market? If not, that's usually a red flag because it indicates that the potential buyer is just thinking about buying and they're not really fully committed to it yet. The second thing is it listed at the correct price? A real estate agent can prepare a CMA for the property that they're trying to sell to determine whether or not their asking price is realistic. The last thing you want to do is take a contract contingent upon a buyer's home selling and it's 10% overpriced and you're just sitting there wasting your time waiting for a buyer to sell their property that's not going to sell. Another thing to ask is how long has it been on the market? If they've been trying to sell their home for a year and a half and they want to buy yours, what reason do you have to believe that it's going to sell next week and that this is going to be a short process? And then the average, last thing is, the average amount of time it takes for a home to sell in that neighborhood. If the average days on market is 30 days or so, you should expect it to sell in, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. If it's 90 days or more, you could be waiting a little while. You run that risk of being on the market and under contract for several months. And as buyers are looking at that property online and realize it's under contract, they move on to a different property. And then, 3 or 4 months down the road, you're kind of left with no more interested buyers. You're just waiting for new buyers to enter the market to become interested in your property. You've exhausted all those people that are ready, willing, and able to transact right now. They're going to go and find something else. Now, having said all of that, a home sale contingency can be a good thing if the seller's property has been on the market for a while, or if the buyer, again, is willing to give you what you want. In many cases, it's advisable to limit the amount of time the buyer has to sell their house in order to buy yours, right? On all my home sale contingency contracts, for listings that I represent, I put a time frame on it. You have X amount of days or months to put your property under contract or close on it, and if you don't, deal's off. We have the right to put the property back on the market because I don't want my listings to get stale. and the sellers sure don't want that either. And we've talked about kick-out clauses. The bottom line is this. Home sale contingencies can protect buyers who want to sell their house first before purchasing another. If you want the exact details on this process, remember, it takes a lot of thinking, it takes discussion, it takes honesty, and it takes a real estate agent that really understands how to do this and protect their clients confidently, both contractually and through the experiences they've had. So if you are one of those people that next year are thinking of selling your home to buy another, then feel free to give me a call. My cell phone is 843-345-1273, and we'll talk about that off air. We'll have a discussion about what needs to happen and what sort of plan we need to put in place to ensure that we're working toward that common goal and we're doing so effectively and efficiently. Again, my number, 843-345-1273, if you want to call and talk to me about that. You're also welcome to go to listingsincharleston.com, submit your information there. And with almost half an hour left, we are still taking calls, of course. The number here in the studio, 843-556-1250. Call with your answer or questions. We'll get them answered. All that and more as the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues right here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Visit Brian Beatty's website at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back. Thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. I always like to take a little bit of time to say thank you to those of you that listen to this program. It's always really cool to have conversations with people that hear the program and learn something from it. That really is the goal of this program, is for it to be educational in nature. This is not a salesy show. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to help you better understand the real estate market, the process of buying, selling, and investing in real estate so that you're an informed consumer. And if we have the luck of working with you, then hopefully you're a little easier to work with because you know more. But I do appreciate it very much. And so thank you to those of you that listen to this program. Now, if you want to be on the program, we are taking your calls this morning. The number here in the studio, 843-556-1250. 843-556-1250. And as I've mentioned a few times, if you want to reach me off air once this show ends at 10, we also air this show Sunday, 10 to 11. So if you're listening to me Sunday, I'm not in the studio. But give me a call on the cell, 843-345-1273, 345-1273, or go to listingsincharleston.com. So let's shift our discussion now to closing costs. When you buy a house and when you sell a house, there's more than just the purchase price, the sales price, okay? You also have closing costs. Now, when you're a buyer, it doesn't matter if you're paying cash or you're getting a mortgage. You have closing costs. The amount of closing costs you pay at closing will vary greatly depending upon whether you're paying cash or getting a mortgage. And if you're getting a mortgage, your closing costs will vary depending upon which lender you choose. So what are closing costs? Let's just define that simply first. Closing costs are just the fees associated with the closing of a real estate transaction. They occur at closing, and they are incurred by both buyers and sellers. So, what are some of these charges that go into your closing costs? They vary quite widely based on where you live and the property you buy, but they include things like a fee for running your credit report, a loan origination fee, which is what lenders charge for processing the loan paperwork for you, attorney's fees. When you go and you settle, the attorney is going to charge you a fee. You've got charges for any inspections required or requested by the lender of you. We've got two basic ones, the home inspection and something called a CL100, which is a termite and moisture inspection. You could also have on your loan something called discount points, which are fees that you pay in exchange for a lower interest rate. You can do something called buying down your interest rate by purchasing discount points. You're going to have an appraisal fee, which is going to be, $650, somewhere around there. You might have a survey fee, which covers the cost of verifying the property lines, which you definitely want to do. I can't tell you the amount of times somebody has hired me to sell their property, and we come to find out that the neighbor's fence is on my seller's lot, or something went wrong, or nobody got permission at some point in time and they put something on my client's property. Sometimes it's the other way around, and we have to deal with that, especially if the seller next door is also selling their house. That's where it really becomes a point of contention, because we're dealing with encroachments and money, and it doesn't. It's really never all that pretty. But you've got something else called title insurance, which protects the lender in the event the title isn't clean. You've got the title search fee, which pays for, it's basically a background check on the title to make sure that there aren't any things that the attorney, when they do the title search, finds things like unpaid mortgages or liens, or something like a mechanic's lien. Let's say you hired a contractor to do some work and they did the work and you never paid them. Well, they can put a lien on your property for that. It's called a mechanic's lien. Then you've got your recording fee, which is a much smaller fee. It's what you pay to the city or the county in exchange for recording the deed. And then you've got things like underwriting fees, which covers the cost of evaluating a mortgage loan application. So you've got all these fees. That sounds like a lot. And it is. Now, depending upon the purchase price of the property, those closing costs are also going to be factored into the cost associated with closing, because you're going to have to add something called prepaids. Now, prepaids for a purchase loan, prepaids consist of the per diem interest, the first year's insurance premium, and things like taxes. So you have to pay in some things when you get a mortgage. So per diem interest is let me just kind of run through this list here, because I want you to better understand that you've got closing costs and you've got prepaids. A lot of people just focus on closing costs. They forget about the prepaids. Combined, for the average priced home in Charleston, you're looking at around 3% of the purchase price as being closing costs and prepaids when you get a mortgage. When you pay cash, it's, $1,200 to $1,500, depending upon the attorney you use and some of the other things that you pay for. But prepaids, so you've got per diem interest. This is the amount of interest you pay at closing for the number of days remaining in a month after funding the loan. Let me give you a quick example. If you close and fund your loan on the 15th of the month with 31 days in that month, then you're going to owe 16 days of interest at closing. Your first payment won't start until the month after. So a lot of people think, oh, well, I get a month free if I close in the middle of the month. No, you still have to pay interest. No such thing as a free lunch, unfortunately. Then you've got to pay your first year's insurance. So your first year insurance premium is going to be due at closing. It's difficult to estimate because the amount depends on, a variety of variables. But for a very rough estimate, use 0.006, I think, is the factor that I take into consideration. A $200,000 loan, it's going to be about $1,200. Okay, little more than 0.5%. I tell people all the time that factor in about 1% in terms of what you're going to pay annually for taxes and insurance. That's your carrying cost. If you're buying a $300,000 house, you're probably going to be spending around $3,000 a year in taxes and insurance if it's your primary residence. Okay, another thing you have to prepay for are your real estate taxes. Then you have to prepay for, something like your HOA. Sometimes HOAs charge what I like to call a welcome to the neighborhood fee. You have to pay 2 or 3 months into the HOA to contribute toward their reserves so that as they're doing ongoing maintenance, they have some money to draw from. They get that from people that buy property and are now your lovely neighbors. So those things combined, closing costs and prepaids, are what you are responsible for as a buyer when you purchase a property getting a mortgage. Now, again, if you're paying cash, it's $1,200-$1,500 out the door, and you've got very little in terms of additional cost other than the check you write to the seller for the property. As a seller, you have some closing costs as well. Those closing costs consist of commission, your fair share of property taxes for the amount of time you've owned that property this year. You've got something called deed stamps, which are also called transfer taxes. Deed stamps are $3.70 for every $1,000 the house is worth. So if you're selling a $100,000 house, it's $370. Then you've got your attorney's fees. Then you've got your recording fees. And then you're going to have a few other costs kind of sprinkled in there. You know, if you want documents couriered, if you want your proceeds wired to you, all these little kind of miscellaneous expenses are still out there, but they're probably no more than $150. So when I sell a property, when we help somebody purchase a property, we do something called a net sheet. We help people understand, hey, if you're going to take this offer, here is what this means to you in terms of your bottom line price. And I think people very often get into trouble because they start to focus on, all right, well, here's an offer. It's $300,000, and I'm paying a 6% commission, so we're going to take $18,000 off of that. So now we're left with what, $282,000, and that's my net. That's what I'm going to walk away with. I'm going to take the offer, and then a few days before closing, when the closing attorney sends you your documents, and you realize it's more like $285,000 because you forgot to factor in taxes and deed stamps and all of that stuff. You're like, well, wait a minute. I didn't realize that it was an additional $3,000 off the sale of this house. I need that money. I don't want to do this deal. That's a failure of communication between the agent and the seller. So just understand that. If you're going to sell a house, make sure your agents are doing net sheets so that you get a really good understanding of the breakdown of all the dollars and cents associated with the expenses of the transaction, so you know what you're going to walk away with and that it's good enough for you. And if that's something I can help you with, feel free to give me a call. My cell is 843-345-1273. Again, that's 345-1273. My website, listingsincharleston.com, if you want to contact me. And with about 10 minutes left in the program, still a little time to call in and ask your questions. The number here in the studio, 843-556-1250. We're going to take one more break. We'll be right back right here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 9 and each Sunday morning at 10 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. WTMA. Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, to the last few minutes of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on 1250 WTMA. Thanks for joining me again this morning. As we continue our discussion on real estate, I want to shift to my last topic now, which is staging, preparing your home for sale. Now, I want you guys to go to my website because I have put on there a list of things that you can do to prepare your home for sale. This is a pre-marketing checklist, and this is written by yours truly. This is something that I've put a lot of time and energy into. It is lengthy, I will tell you that, but if you do everything on that list, you are going to be the star of the show. You will be the prettiest girl at the dance, I promise you that. Your house will be ready to sell, and so will you. The website, listingsincharleston.com. Click on the blog section, and you will see at the very top of the page, 90 things to do to sell your home for top dollar. This is something that I have not been willing to share publicly until now. Usually I reserve this for clients or people considering hiring me because I've written it. I'm sure it will show up somewhere else now. That's fine, but there's a lot of really good information there. And so what I wanted to do is just cover a few of those areas and just talk about staging in general. So again, listingsincharleston.com is where you're going to go to get that. Click on the blog section. 90 things to do to sell your home for top dollar is the blog. And you can print it off right there. And of course, if you have questions, you want to call into the studio, we have a few minutes left. The number here, 843-556-1250. We'd love to take a question or two. Lastly, get this out of the way. If you want to call me directly, you want to talk about real estate off air, my cell number is 345-1273. 843-345-1273, okay? So let's talk about staging for the last few minutes here. You know, the National Association of Realtors puts out a profile of home staging every year. And let me just read off a few of these highlights here because this is always kind of interesting to me. Among sellers agents, people that represent sellers, 34% stage all homes, 13% stage difficult homes to sell, and 4% stage only high-priced homes. It goes on to say that 32% of buyer agents believe staged homes increase the dollar value buyers are willing to offer by 1 to 5%. So basically, a third of buyers are willing to pay 1 to 5% more. And then lastly, the median dollar value to stage a home was $675. So I want to just talk for a brief moment about staging in general, because I'll tell you one of the hardest things I've encountered to get over when you're selling a house, and that is to not take this personally. When you decide and you make the commitment to sell your house, you need to think of your house as a product, one that you want to sell fast and for top dollar. So don't take buyers' remarks personally. Instead, think of it as free advice on how to make your product live up to its highest potential. You have to emotionally detach yourself, which is a very hard thing to do. Everyone lives in their home a certain way, and some people are generally unclean, some people are clean freaks. Most people fall kind of somewhere in the middle. Most people aren't perfectionists, OCD. Some people aren't total slobs. Most people just, hey, we're just normal, all right? I have a 3-year-old, a 1.5-year-old. Someone's coming over for dinner. Yeah, we're gonna take the time to make sure our house looks as good as we can make it look. But you walk into my house, Tuesday at 5:30. Guess what? There's gonna be some stuff around. It's just the way it is. All right, we're all human, okay? But when you sell your house, remember, the goal is to sell your home for the most money and in the quickest time. You want the least amount of showings possible. No one likes going through 20 or 30 showings before they realize they need to make some changes. So don't take it personally when the agent recommends you do some things. The other thing is, don't do major renovations. Finishes and fixtures that you see as, beautiful might not suit every buyer's taste, which is why when, I have conversations with sellers, they're like, well, I want to do granite countertops, and we were thinking about putting in some new hardwoods before we sell the house. And I'm like, all right, stop. We're not going to do those things. I say this about 95% of the time. We're not going to do those things because you decide to put in hardwood flooring, that might not be to the buyer's taste. You decide you want to put in granite, what are you going to do? You're going to put in black granite, you're going to put in beige granite, you're going to do some kind of funky green granite. I don't know. But there are hundreds of types of options out there. Why don't we just offer the buyer a credit? If you're committed to making that change, why not let the buyer make that change? All they want's the money. All they want's the ability to make that choice. Give them that ability, and it doesn't have to be just for countertops. Once you write a check for granite countertops, that money is spent. If you're going to take $5,000, maybe they put that toward new appliances. Maybe they put that toward fixtures. Maybe they put that toward an HVAC. The options are endless. Don't pigeonhole yourself into just granite countertops. So don't do major renovations. In fact, they're on my website, listingsincharleston.com. There's a breakdown of the cost versus value, essentially the return on investment on renovations to your house. It comes from Remodeling Magazine's Cost versus Value Report. If you go to listingsincharleston.com and go to my blog, you can find it there. Last thing I'm going to say before we have to jump off air here is don't think your house will sell yourself. Just because we're in a seller's market does not mean people are going to walk through your house and say, it's got some work to be done, but there's nothing else out there, so I guess I'm just going to have to deal with it and buy this house. That's not the mentality of buyers. Buyers are not so desperate to buy that they're going to settle. Think about it another way. If you have the ability to earn more money by putting in some extra time and preparing your home for sale, it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg to prepare your home for sale. It just has to cost you a little bit of time. If you have the ability to make more money and sell your home faster, why not do it? That's the benefit of a seller's market. Now, if you'd like to speak with me about selling a property, you want to talk about this process, happy to do so. Give me a call. My cell is 843-345-1273. Again, that's 345-1273. I know a lot of you are thinking about selling your home next year. Let's start putting a plan in place. All right. It's never too early to prepare to sell your property and buy another. So again, 843-345-1273 is my cell. Of course, my website where you can go to get that article I mentioned, listingsincharleston.com. Click on the blog section, 90 things to do to sell your home for top dollar. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all enjoy your weekend. Thanks for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show right here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 10. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345-1273.